on, guys? Welcome back to the Good Success Podcast. I am your host, Josh Culler, and it is the middle of July. It is nice and hot outside, and we have Rosario. Rosario, let me see what.
Just give it a shot, man.
Okay, so let me pull it up because I actually had your last name.
Now I'm not going to tell you.
Terracciano.
You got it.
You
got it. Good job.
And that's straight Italian, right?
Yeah.
Is that how you pronounce it in Italian?
No.
Pronounce it in Italian then. We got to hear it.
Terracciano.
Okay, gotcha.
But hey, you're close enough, man. It was good. Good
Sweet
job.
deal. So we got Rosario with us, and he is from Clickinvest, an excellent website that you guys are going to hear a lot about. We're going to talk about that here in just a second, but we actually do some of this stuff with Rosario. So Jared Stonemeister, you guys have seen him before. He's actually the buy and sell director for Olson Group, which buys and sells the properties. And we're doing some work. We're trying to get more into Illinois, which is where Rosario's product actually is the headquartered at. And so Jared uses that, I believe, and loves it. And we also have talked to other people that use this as well. So we're going to talk about it a little bit here, but we're going to come back around to Rosario. So before we get into it, if you guys are watching Facebook Live right now, thank you so much for joining in on us. If you are watching this post-produce or you're listening to the podcast, we do go Facebook Live every Friday at 12 noon Central Standard Time. So make sure you join us. Now, in a couple of weeks, we're actually not going to go live because we're going to be running the Community Go-Giver event, which you guys will hear about in just a second. But make sure you do that. And then if you are coming by way of knowing Rosario, but you don't know who we are, we're Good Success. We have a podcast once a week. We have a podcast come out. We are on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. So make sure you subscribe to us. We get investors on here like Rosario, all-stars that are great investors. They have amazing products, and they're great entrepreneurs, and a lot of big influencers that actually get on this podcast that are in the real estate investing world. So it's all educational stuff. We love educational people that push out educational content. And so we get a lot of those on here. It's going to be awesome. So make sure you subscribe to us if you are not already. And then let's talk about the Community Go-Giver events. So our Community Go-Giver event is coming up in just a couple of weeks, July 25, 26, and 27, happening right here in our office in Gary, Indiana. And the Community Go-Giver event's all about bringing you guys in and actually teaching you how you can go back and flip your communities, because one of the visions for our actual company, so not just Good Success, but we have the mother company, which is Olson Group, and we have a property management company, construction, buy and sell, and then Good Success. And one of the visions of the entire company is to flip the entire city of Gary. And yes, I know it sounds crazy, but we are already in motion and doing stuff right now, right this second, and we're involved in a lot of things that are going on in this. And so this event is all about that and raising the awareness for it and bringing in local investors and local contractors, people that are have some form of being able to help with this vision. But then we're also bringing outside our outside network to like kind of show them how to flip their own communities, which we're actually teaming up with Walter Walford from the Financial Friends Network, who has his own kind of Community Go-Giver event called the Jackson. It's in Jackson, Mississippi, which Jackson, Mississippi is a very similar market to Gary, Indiana. And so he hosts his own event that he teaches all this stuff as well. So we're going to be having Walter Walford there. Obviously, Tom Olson, president of Good Success, is going to be speaking there. Jim Ingersoll, Mr. Landlord, Jeffrey Taylor is going to be there. Sean Waddle with National Real Estate Insurance Group. Eddie Wilson is going to be talking about Christian Media International, which is a nonprofit organization that helps get the gospel out to other countries. And he's going to be one of our Community Go-Givers for the actual event. And then Ken Lacey with Veterans Path Up. The first day, Tom Olson's actually going to talk about his vision for flipping Gary. And then we're also going to have Carol Ellis, who is editor-in-chief for the Think Realty magazine, which we're partners with Think Realty. And she's going to be talking a lot about the vision for flipping Gary as well, because she does a lot of digging and she's been helping us with that vision as well. So she's going to be on stage with Tom talking about that. And then we have several other speakers, Gary Harper, Josh Belk, Quincy Long is going to be there. Quincy Long with Quest IRA is going to be there. Fantastic person. Most of these guys are in our Good Success Mastermind. So you guys check it out, communitygogiver.com. We are selling out at 80 seats and we have very few available right now. So make sure you go sign up for that and check that out. If you are local, it's going to be extremely awesome for you guys to get to meet our national network. And if you're a national person, if you're not in our area, then you guys can meet our local network as well. So make sure you check that out. Kevin's going to be on the links below, communitygogiver.com. And then we have our Good Success Mastermind coming up August 9, 10, and 11. And that is actually happening in our backyard as well. So that's going to be at Innsbrook Country Club. That is in Maryville, Indiana. It's about 10 minutes from our office, and we're bringing in all of our members for that event. It's going to be awesome. So make sure you guys try to check that out. It is a elite group of real estate investors that we get together from across the country. They collaborate and just do straight up masterminding, a lot of networking. It's awesome stuff. So make sure you guys check that out. goodsuccess.com/mastermind. You do have to fill out an application. We don't let just anybody in. Yes, we do vet the volume of deals that you're doing and what the scale of your business, but also we vet your character. If you're a giver, if you're a taker, we don't have a lot of people in the room that feel comfortable with that. The culture that we've set up is all about giving and all about what type of success, which is good success for us. So check that out, goodsuccess.com/mastermind. August 9, 10, 11 is the next event. So without further ado, Rosario, I am tired of talking. It is getting hot under these lights. It's the middle of July, and we don't really have any way of getting air into our actual studio. So it's getting a little hot, man, but it's awesome. You're right next door to us over in Chicago. And so, you feel my pain here. And
I do.
It's first world problems too, because we're up north. So it's how do you think people down south feel with this hot weather?
Agreed.
So, awesome. So I'm excited about this interview. I actually got on a phone call a few weeks ago with Rosario to talk about what we're actually going to talk about on the podcast. And he gave me his whole story, and it is absolutely fantastic. You guys are going to enjoy this one. A lot of backstory that I'm sure he's going to go into, and I hope you do, Rosario. So before we get into the actual questions, the actual interview, do me a favor for people that don't know who you are. Introduce yourself. So talk about your past, how you actually got started into real estate investing, all the way up until today. You have clickinvest.com. So talk about that and give us a brief introduction of who you are.
Awesome. And first off, thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate it. This is a great opportunity for us at Clickinvest, and we're grateful for the opportunity that you guys are giving us. So thank you for having me on, despite all the heat.
Yeah.
So I got into business in 2003. Prior to that, I was in the financial market. So I was trading S&P futures, NASDAQ futures, and then clerking on the floor of the exchange. So the stock market, right? That's where I was. But that time in my life, I was in a very dark place. And as dark could be, really. And I was actually led to a book called The Power of Positive Thinking. And that book led me to the Bible. So my life was changed. And from that point on, I knew I had to get out of the stock market. It just wasn't for me. And I wanted to get into a business that I felt had no top. And aside from the stock market, the only other business I really knew of at the time was real estate. So I dove in head first, got my life clean. Really, God got my life clean, not me. Mm-hmm. And dove in head first, wholesaled for the first couple years. So from 2003 to 2005 was a wholesaler. So a lot like most people out there, I read a book on real estate, watched some shows, and thought I knew it all.
Yes.
So, and everybody tells you be a wholesaler. That's the way to go. So right. Started wholesaling, was doing well. And in 2005, got the itch and started rehabbing for myself. So instead of wholesaling to the investors, I started taking down those deals for myself, raised money from family and friends, built up a small rental portfolio, got up to about 8 rentals. And then I was doing a bunch of flips on the side as well, because my mindset was, buy these rentals, but do these flips, take the money from the flips and pay off the rentals. Mm-hmm. And my goal, God willing, was to be, ready and within a few years have 30, 40, 50 rentals and then focus full time on ministry. That was my plan. Yeah. But that plan didn't go as planned. And in 2007, 2008, the market turned and I got completely wiped out. So lost everything. I got married in 2005. We had our oldest son in 2007 and lost everything in 2008. So had to start over. Very tough time. I lost money from family and friends. I lost my money. I literally went from Lakeshore Drive to a small apartment in the suburbs of Chicago. So very, very humbling experience.
Yeah.
And thank God I'm blessed with a great wife who was super encouraging and would kick me out of bed in the morning, said, get up and, get out there and do it again. And I got my GC license when I was rehabbing, and I took that and started to do a lot of property preservation work. If people don't know what that is, it's basically all the dirty work for the bank-owned properties that were in the market. So when a bank takes a property back, they need a contractor to do the trash outs and winterizations and rekeys and all the dirty work. So I went from being an investor, buying from the banks, to now, cleaning up the bank's properties.
Yeah.
In 2009, one of my mentors approached me and said, hey, you know so much about this REO market and this REO game. Why don't you become an REO broker? So I launched Resurrecting Real Estate in February 2009. And within a few years, we quickly became one of the top brokerages in the state. And then in 2013 was our peak year. We sold 640 homes, and we were ranked 4th nationally by Wall Street Journal. So blessed with a great team, and fast forward and now Clickinvest. So.
Well, awesome. So tell us a little bit about Clickinvest. So what can people expect? I know that you're in the Illinois market just right now, but possibly opening up to more markets pretty soon. So talk about that real quick. I know that we have a lot of listeners that are actually local to the Chicago market, Northwest Indiana, because we're in Northwest Indiana, but we also have a lot of people that are actually national. So give us a little bit of an overview of what people can expect with Clickinvest.
Great. So, you spoke about vision, you spoke about mission. Well, our why, the reason we do what we do is to give investors their time back. When I was a rehabber, you read the books or you watch the videos or the TV shows, and everybody wants real estate. So it's very easy to pitch that to people, and you're going to get complete transparency with me. So
yeah, good.
Yeah. So there's this fake it till you make it, or it's, hey, rehab from the beach and everybody's successful. And HGTV makes it look so real and so easy.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And it's not. So, what ends up happening is people get into real estate, and then a few weeks in, they find out it's a lot of hard work. And the hardest part in most cases is the acquisition piece. And especially in today's market, you got to spend a ton of time and energy to find that deal. So the part of the story I left out really was how Clickinvest was born. So we were a top REO broker, and then we were approached by Invitation Homes. I'm not sure if you know who those guys are. Publicly traded company, huge hedge fund backed by Wall Street, came into our market and nationally bought 50,000 single family homes from 2012 to 2014. And we ended up being their top broker in Illinois. The guy that ran their acquisitions in Illinois and Minnesota, a gentleman by the name of Jeffrey Kirshner, has since come on and become my partner. So between the two of us, we've done nearly 7,000 transactions, and all that sounds great, but there's a lot of work that goes into it. So going back to the average investor is putting in, if you're an active investor, 20 to 30 hours a week just on looking for deals and sourcing deals. What Clickinvest does is essentially does all that work for the investor. We have in-house acquisitions, in-house appraisers. We've leveraged technology. So essentially we've automated 80% of the process. So our system finds the best deals in the market on a daily basis. We built algorithms that, think of it as like a major or a huge search engine, right? So it filters through, finds the best deals in the market, going through thousands of properties a day, spits it out into the laps of our appraisers. Our in-house appraisers will do a final review all from the desktop and send out the deals with the ARV, so the after repair value, a rehab estimate telling you exactly what you have to do to the property, a suggested offer amount, all the comps are included. There's a write-up. Everything is there for you to simply make a decision in less than a minute and just click a button. That's it. Wow. So instead of the average investor that has to go into Redfin or work with a broker that sends them an address and no data, or works with a wholesaler that in a lot of times is just skewing the numbers. Right. The ARVs are always higher than what they are. The rehab's always lower than what it is. So we vet every single deal that goes to our investor, and everything is custom to them. So they can see their return on investment. They can see their estimated net profit based on their cost of capital, everything. And in less than a minute, they can decide, do I want to pursue this deal or not? If I do, click submit offer. We handle everything. We get the contract submitted. We negotiate the deal for them. Once it's accepted, our field guy meets them at the property, walks through the property with them, and then we take it from contract to closing, the entire process, so that they can focus more time on what matters, whether it's their family, serving, or focusing on just building their business the way they initially intended to.
So you talked about all this hard work that goes into the actual finding. How many people do you have on your team?
Today, including software development, there's about 15 of us.
Okay.
In the office, there's 8, and then we've got software development. But at my peak, between internal ops, virtual assistants, and external, so the field ops and our brokers, it was 60 people.
Wow. Awesome. Yeah, sounds like quite an operation, and sounds like there's a lot of brain power going behind that software as well too. So
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, awesome. So right now you're just in Illinois. So people, like, is it all of Illinois or just the Chicagoland area, or what?
So Chicagoland area, so we cover 6 counties. It's essentially a 60-mile radius from downtown Chicago is where we like to focus.
Okay.
For most of our clients, that's where they want to be. They want to focus on areas where there's volume. What we don't like to do is just drop into an area where there's 1 comp or 2 comps. Right. I mean, there's got to be activity. So that's where we focus.
Gotcha. And we're actually trying to convince Rosario to be in Northwest Indiana soon.
Yeah.
So we're right across the street from him. So we're gonna get there eventually, but
eventually.
Right now,
after Florida, perhaps.
After Florida, there you go. So yeah, fantastic stuff. So Kevin's gonna have a link below, but clickinvest.com, you guys can check that out. If you're, especially if you're in the Chicagoland area, make sure you do, check out this software, because it's I know that Jared uses it and he says it's extremely easy. We're working on right now. We're trying to focus in Northwest Indiana, so we're not doing much in Chicago with Clickinvest, but I have heard some great stuff about it as well. So kind of veering off of your current career,
yeah,
you talked a lot about, so in your backstory, you talked a lot about your going through the crash, right? Yeah. So a lot of people that I get on here on these interviews have been through the crash. A lot of people that we're investors, and a lot of them, they weren't shaped into something else. They were doing the same thing they were before the crash that they are now, but with obvious, repercussions and tweaking of their deals and that kind of thing. It seems like you kind of took maybe not a totally different path, but a little bit of a different path with it after you surfaced out of the crash. So somebody that is listening right now, because crashes, regardless of what people think, and I know that president of Good Success, Tom Olson, has his own thoughts on the next crash that might possibly happen. For somebody, if that ever came up, even if it's not just a crash, even if it's just a personal life experience where, they get hit hard with something, whether it's health, finances, or whatever it is, how are you able to push past the roadblocks of the actual crash and everything that you went through? You said you lost everything. Yeah. How are you able to push through those roadblocks? What made you keep going and actually, surface back up? You talked about your wife kicking you out of the bed, but besides that, that's the number one thing. But besides that,
well, that was number 2.
Okay.
Number 1 by far, faith. I mean, it was my faith in God and just trusting that everything would be okay. A lot of times in life, you get in these storms and you're not looking past the storm. You think the storm's going to last the rest of your life. But there's seasons, right? Scripture talks about it. There's seasons in life. And that was definitely a season of growth and learning. And so I would say that was number 1, was faith. Number 2, certainly my wife, her encouragement, her love, her belief that we were going to be okay. Because there are days where I'm just like, I didn't want to get out of bed, like I said, and I'm just like, we can't do this. And it was her encouragement to just keep pushing forward, and her faith to keep pushing forward. And then having the right people around me, having the right counsel around me. Scripture talks about iron sharpens iron, and I had a lot of guys around me that were sharpening me and pushing me to be better. So that was a really huge part of it. It's more mental. I mean, people, you go through these downturns, or you go through the crashes and you go through all that. And a lot of people are like, oh, you just muscled through, or, oh, you just You just switch your strategy or this or that. And for me personally, at least, it was more of a head game than anything else. It was, battling those demons and getting through and having the right mindset and pushing through mentally, and then coming up with different strategies and how to attack it.
Gotcha. Well, so you talked about how you were a wholesaler before.
Yep.
And then you got into fix and flip. Now, would you if knowing now what you know now, would you actually go back and do something different before the crash, that different than what you were doing before? Or do you think that what you were doing wouldn't have been preventative even if the crash didn't happen?
A wise man once said, if you could go back and do anything different, don't, right? Because of all the lessons that you've learned. But I can share why I think what happened to me happened.
Right.
Because there were people that survived, obviously, right? Let's face it, there were plenty of people that survived. There were investors that I knew at the time that thrived during all that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was looking to my right and left, and a lot of the guys that I was around or that I was doing business with, we all floundered. My issues were, in a hot market, it's easy to make money, right? Market's going up, anybody can make money. You can make mistakes in a hot market. I didn't buy right. I didn't rehab right. I didn't lease right. I didn't manage right, and I was still making money. What happened was when the market pulled back, I was counting on my flips, and then my flips were the properties that got stuck. And then in that case, because I didn't buy those flips right, because it's one, I tell people all the time, when you're flipping, you should buy a flip that, God forbid, if you couldn't sell it, you could rent it out and be okay.
Right.
The properties that I bought were 2 flats in distressed areas. I overpaid for them. I over rehabbed, and there's such a thing as over rehab, but
yeah, there is.
So I did, and then the ARVs weren't there, and then the market pulled back. The rents weren't there. I couldn't cover the monthly nut. So now you've got an asset that's underwater, and I couldn't sell it because the market turned. So I had 10 buildings like that. And then you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. And then the cash flow on the rentals was minimal, because my LTV was high, and I had subsidized, a lot of the tenants were, or the rents were subsidized, and the portions weren't getting paid.
Mm-hmm.
So if your net cash flow is $400, but your tenant's portion is $400 and they don't pay you, what's your net?
Yeah, exactly.
So if I could go back, I would have bought right. I take it back. If I could go back, I would have surrounded myself with people that knew what they were doing in that space.
Yeah.
Specifically rentals and building a rental portfolio, because I didn't buy right because I wasn't around the right people. I didn't rehab right because I didn't know what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't lease up right because I literally interview a tenant, first tenant. Oh, you're the tenant. Like, didn't do any background checks, didn't do anything.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know what I was doing. So I would have surrounded myself with people that were in that specific niche and knew what they were doing.
Gotcha. So you're obviously the CEO of Clickinvest right now. Do you currently do any investing like that at all?
No. So what happened to me was lost everything in 08, right? 09 launched the brokerage. It took me years just to get through and clean my credit up, because I had a deal. I didn't file BK, so I avoided bankruptcy, but foreclosure, short sales, loan mods, had to do all that because of all the properties we had, and I had partners on stuff. And then by the time all that got cleaned up, now it's 2012, 2013, and we're selling for banks, Fannie, Freddie, B of A, Chase, all those guys. I can't buy any of their product. That's one of the steps when you're an REO broker. But in addition to that, we're also working with one of the largest hedge funds in the world. Yeah. So couldn't buy. And now fast forward, and it's 2018, and essentially what our brokerage has become, because it's not just software, right? It's twofold. There's a membership fee to be a part of Clickinvest, but we're a brokerage. So we thrive on the deals. So for me, instead of getting back into flipping, if we sell 20 houses a month, it's the equivalent to me of selling 3 flips a month.
Yeah.
So this has become, in essence, our flip fund. Right. Rentals is something I do want to get back into, because it's just a no-brainer. but yeah, it was, I was licking my wounds for years after.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that's incredible. I love that. So kind of switching tracks a little bit away from that. So obviously you've built a couple businesses that are thriving now and are definitely successful businesses. So somebody out there that's wanting to build a business. So let's talk about a little bit about business. What's one of the first things that someone needs to think about when they get into business? Now, a lot of our listeners are actual solopreneurs, but at the same time, you're still running a business, even if you are the only person in the actual operation that's an employee, because obviously they have, contractors, they got VAs, they got, other people that are working outside of the company. But for somebody that's wanting to get into it, because yes, a lot of our listeners are experienced real estate investors, are experienced business owners, but a good portion of them are not, but they're wanting to be. What would you say that the first thing that somebody needs to think about when building a business, like it's very vital, they cannot miss it no matter what it is, no matter what business that they're in? Maybe it's just a basic principle. What would that be?
Define your why, and what are you willing to sacrifice to get it? Because a lot of people think that you can just start a business and it's going to take off, and it's not. I mean, there's a great book out there, E-Myth, right?
Right.
Where you've got to wear all the hats. It's so true. I don't know why people think real estate is any different than owning a Subway or McDonald's or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, you don't see any shows about plumb this house, right? Like, become a plumber, right? But real estate's no different than owning a plumbing company. Like, you have to have a foundation, you have to have principles, you have to understand margin. So there's all these other things that we'll talk about too that you have to get into. But understanding your why, knowing your why, like, why do you want to build a business? If it's just money, 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 I mean, yeah, some guys are driven like that, but eventually, I mean, you're going to make money, you're going to lose money. And when you lose money, your why has got to carry you through that, because it stinks. And I've been there. I've made millions. I've lost millions. And if you don't have a why when all that's said and done, you're not going to want to go to work.
Right.
So understanding your why, and then what are you willing to sacrifice to get there? Because for years, I sacrificed family time. I sacrificed health. I sacrificed money, relationships, all this stuff to get what I thought was going to fill my cup. And, it didn't. And it took me years to figure that out. So you have to know what you're willing to pay. And then after all that, determine if you're willing to make that sacrifice for that business.
Absolutely. And do you mind sharing what your why is? Yes or no?
Yeah, no, I will.
On the spot here.
And yeah, and I'm big into being vulnerable, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I still struggle with the why. In complete transparency. And I'm one of those guys, like I said, I'm gonna be vulnerable and share, and I hope that adds value to somebody. But
absolutely,
forever it was my wife and kids, and I've been a provider, thank God. I've provided for them for years. They've got a roof over their heads and they eat. Like, there's nothing wrong there. But there are times in business, I think especially when you have your ups and downs, where this may sound nuts. Some mornings that's not enough. Like, I know we got a roof over their heads. I know they got all that stuff. What's the point of me flooring it or go, my why can't just be so I can take my family on vacation. At least me personally. Yeah. It just becomes empty eventually. It's like you go on a trip and then it's like, now what? Now what? There's always this now what. So more recently it's been about, okay, how are we delivering our business? So there's multiple whys. It's like, are we delivering it with excellence, right? We have an acronym here. It's HIT, so HIT, but it's really honesty, integrity, and transparency. Do we operate that way? Because number one, we have to honor God in how we do business. At least I do. Right. I can't force it on my employees, but for myself and my partner, that's where our convictions stand. So if we're doing our business in a certain way, I mean, are we honoring God with it? But the why, our why as a company is really to give our clients their time back, because that's the one thing that you can't buy more of. Right. And that's the one thing that nobody talks about. Sure, we can help our clients with this, or we can help our clients with that, or we can get them a deal. In reality, in the end, we're giving them time back. And now what can they do with that time? If it's a client that wants to serve, they can go out and serve more. If it's a client that wants to be a better dad or a better husband, now they've got time to go do that. If it's a client that just wants to buy time back to maybe fix a relationship, or wants to buy time back just so they can sleep, whatever, so our why is giving clients their time back so then they can go off and do whatever they feel led to do.
That's so strong. I love that too, because a lot of companies that we come across, first of all, they don't know their why. And then you ask them, why they're in business, and they don't really know. They have their taglines, that kind of thing. Yeah. Right. But what you have, I think that's absolutely fantastic, that you're not going to find hardly anywhere else. Giving back your time to your clients shows more caring than anything, because like you said, I strongly believe that time is by far your most valuable currency, because like you said, you can't get that back. You can always get money back, as you know, like you can always get that back, but you can get possessions back, but you can't get time back.
I lost when my second son was born. So we got 2 boys. Yeah. I literally, and people aren't going to like this, because some people are going to think I'm nuts for saying this, but everybody's like, you got to grind, you got to work, you got to put in those hours, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to work 90 hours, you got to work 100 hours, you got to do all this stuff. I got sick working. I got Crohn's disease working that much. Wow. When my second son was born, I was sitting there working while my wife, before going into labor, and then after he was born, sitting there working. And then my wife had a C-section. I wasn't there. I'm saying afterwards, I hired a cleaning lady to take care of my wife because I had to get back to work and make the money. It's like, where do you draw the line? So that's my thing. It's like, at the end of the day, I've had to pay the price for that. And thank God now, I have a great relationship with my wife. I'm there for my kids, but that stuff I can't go back in time and get that. So.
Right. Absolutely. No, it's amazing. I definitely appreciate you being vulnerable. I think that's incredible, because we definitely, you said one of your, for your acronym HIT, the T is transparency. So you're definitely living that, even just being on the podcast here. So thanks. Definitely appreciate that. That's amazing. I actually have a banner here that says, if your why is big enough, your what will take care of itself. So that's incredible. That's something that we definitely preach at our mastermind too. We've had guys come through the room and say, I don't know why I'm in business. I don't know why I do what I do. Almost like the same thing you just said, that they don't know why they're grinding. They don't know why they're working 90 hours a week, besides the fact that it's making them money. And some of these guys, they're finding it hard to make money, and they don't know why they're in business. And that's a 1-2 gut punch right there. That's tough.
Yeah.
But when they come to the mastermind, that's definitely something that we push extremely hard, is finding your why, understanding why you're in business. And I think that's awesome. The fact that you have a personal why, but also a business why, because most people have personal whys. A business owner will have a personal why they're in business, but then they don't have a business why for the rest of the employees. Yeah. And I think that's extremely valuable, especially keeping your employees in tune with what your vision is. So like I said at the beginning of the podcast here, the why for our entire company, not just Good Success, but the mother company, Olsen Group, and all the other companies underneath it, is to flip the entire city of Gary, to flip our community, which our office is in Gary, Indiana. So our why is to flip Gary. Obviously that's a long-term thing. And we have smaller whys in between there, right? So we have, charities that we give to and all that kind of stuff. And we have a goal every single quarter of giving to charities and giving to our churches and all that stuff. So I think that's awesome. We could go all day long on the whole why thing, but I think that's fantastic. So I definitely appreciate you sharing that with us. So going again, switching tracks. Yeah. So let's talk about when we were on the call, you talked about margins, and you even mentioned it a few minutes ago about margins in business. So kind of explain what that means, because there's a lot of people that listen, and we talked about the first thing that you need to understand when getting into business. And this is probably a little further down the road, margins, but it's definitely something that needs to be in the forefront of people's minds. So explain, first of all, what that means, and then understanding that and why it's such a downfall for people and not understanding the margins in business. So
margin really is what so if you can see this,
yep, I got it.
Here's what you make, here's what you keep. This is your margin, right? and you've got gross and net. And just like in real estate deals, the big mistake people make is they're so focused on the gross, and gross is gross, right? At the end of the day, you got to know what you're bringing home. And I mean, on a flip deal, for example, someone will look at a deal and it's like, oh, you know, the gross margin, whatever, is 20%, or the gross profit is 20,000. Well, what's your net? If your net's 2,000, that's not a good deal. So you have to understand what you're bringing home. And I've got a story. So I shared 2013, we sold 640 homes, right? We were ranked first in Illinois in terms of volume. I sold more houses than any broker in all of Illinois, okay? Fourth nationally by the Wall Street Journal. So I was ranked fourth in terms of volume throughout the entire country. So there were only 3 people in the entire country that sold more houses than me that year. And it's like, oh, applause, way to go, Rosario. What people don't know is within 3 months of getting that award of being top broker, I let go of 80% of my staff.
Wow.
80%. I went from maybe a little bit less than 80, but anyways, I went from 60 people to 6.
Wow.
Okay. And here's why. My gross, so when you look at sales, okay, I made, let's just say that year alone, over $3 million, okay, in sales commission. So it was $100 million in sales volume, over $100 million in sales volume, $3 million in sales commission, okay? As a brokerage, I should have been at 45 to 50% margin. Just being that's what I should have been at, because it's not traditional brokerage. It's a different model altogether. And guys in my space were at 45 to 50%. So I should have netted 1.5 million. That should have gone in my pocket, right? I was operating at an 8 to 10, more like an 8% margin. Okay. My expenses were $150K a month.
Wow.
Okay. So I had this massive operation and everybody's like, Rosario, you're killing it. You're the best. You're this, you're that. Wow, your numbers. I get the award. And I knew what was going to happen over the next few months. And I get the award. The whole goal of the Chicago Association of Realtors award show is to be announced last, because that means you sold more real estate than anybody else. I was announced last and everybody's coming up to me saying, you crushed it, you killed it. And I'm like, you have no idea.
Yeah.
So my problem was I didn't understand net margin. I was a salesperson that jumped into, that literally 2009, I opened the doors with 1 employee, and within 2 years we were up to 20. And then within 3 years we were up to 60. So it was just a rocket. And
why did you hire so quickly like that? Do you think it's because of the capacity issues with your current employees?
Yeah, well, and the volume, because we weren't leveraging tech like we are today. So we didn't, as much as I'm a systems guy, back then the only system I knew of was an assembly line. So I'm like, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. And we had hundreds and hundreds of assets under management. So we went from 0 to 150 to 400 to 600. And we had to manage all those properties. We had to take care of HOAs, utility turn-ons, cash for keys, evictions, preservation, rehab, everything.
And you're using actual manpower for all that stuff.
Yeah. So we used human capital instead of tech. And my HR was a joke. You walked in, you were hired. Like the hiring process was horrible. So I kept focused, and the worst piece of advice I ever got, and I still love the guy, but the worst piece of advice I ever got was high water hides the broken pier. So think about that. If you're pulling up to a pier, right? High water hides the broken pier. So underneath the water, you see the piers are broken.
So sweeping dirt under the rug.
Yes. His analogy was just make more money and you never got to deal with that stuff. So what did I do?
The money goes down, then you see it again.
Then you see the broken piers and you're done, right?
Yeah.
So I kept going and making more and more and more and more money. So the water was up. But then what happened in March of 2014, that big hedge fund that we represented calls us up and says, hey, thanks so much. We're good. We're done buying.
Oh.
And I'm like, what? I staffed up. I did no warning. And then at the same time, we were getting out of REO because I'm like, wow, REO is for the dogs. our margins are so low on REO. Our margins are so great on acquisitions. Let's just focus on acquisitions. So I started firing my REO clients. Like, don't need you anymore. Well, it wasn't like that, but it was just hey, you know what, thanks, but no thanks. We're going to focus more on this. So what the perfect storm that launched us was also the perfect storm that destroyed us. And in the end, the margins weren't there to stop the bleeding.
So how can somebody go about actually understanding their margins and learning how to actually care for that?
Great question. So literally, I mean, you have to, I'm going to get super advanced using QuickBooks and all that stuff or Excel, but really you have to know what your cost is to run your business on an annual basis, and then a monthly basis, and then a weekly basis, and then a daily basis. You got to know what's called your burn. What's your burn rate? Right. And you cannot, a lot of people will tell you, go out and hire so that you can grow the business. No, grow the business and then go hire. And it's going to stink. You're going to put your time in, and that's why I go back to the original question. You have to know your why. Why are you doing this in the first place? Because when you start working 70, 80, 90 hours a week, because you will have to initially, it's like a rocket launch. All the energy is exerted on the launch. If you don't put all that energy in, the rocket's not going to leave, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to know your why. You got to know your burn rate. And then before you hire, you got to look at that employee and ask yourself, how much are they going to generate for the business, right? Whatever the role that is. Are you going to 2X them, 3X them? And here's why I bring it up. So let's say you're going to hire an employee that's going to cost you $50,000 a year. This is the mistake that everybody makes. You bring on a person that costs you $50,000 a year, and they're not going to generate you any more money. So here's what happens. And this is like done in real estate brokerage world every single day. You're told when you hit a ceiling, build a team, right? So here's what happens. Your sales start to go up. I don't know if you can catch it here. Your sales go up, but your margin goes down. So you're going like this. And if you're going like this, you're going the wrong way, because now it's going to take you a lot more to run this, and you're making less money. And then what happens is the second there's a dip, you can't weather the storm. So if that employee is not going to generate at least one, if they're not going to cover what their salary is, if you can't generate enough business to cover their salary, you can't make the hire. That's just what it is. So that's like desperation, is will they at least cover their salary, right? The next step is, okay, if they're going to cover their salary, can you 2X them? By bringing them on, if they're going to cost you $50,000, can you at least make $100,000 off of them, right? And when I say off of them, it's like, are they going to allow you to now
that much value? Yeah.
Yes. Are they going to allow you to focus on a part of the business that will grow? Right. And then guess what? If you're moving like this, that's the way to go. Yeah. If you're working like this, you're in trouble. Yeah. And people make that same mistake with flips, right? They think you can just put more money into the rehab and you're going to sell it for more. That's not the case. No. Comps are the comps. You can't create value where there's no value. I mean, where the data doesn't support it. Right. So I hope that helps.
No, absolutely. Now, when you do hire people,
yes,
what does your process look like when you're actually hiring somebody? Because
you are good.
I'm just making an assumption that you already like made the correction because you've learned from it. So
absolutely. So when I talk about time, it's so funny because I could sit here and whip a why out and be like, oh, Rosario, that's inspirational. And then we don't live it, right? If you talk to our employees, like I talked to one of our lead appraisers last Friday, now he's gone for 2 weeks on vacation. The topic of the conversation was, these guys have time. And he told me, he goes, Rosario, you have no idea. I was working a job where I was working 80 to 90 hours a week. Wasn't seeing my wife, wasn't seeing my kids. Now with you guys, like I'm at home. I leave here at 4:30. I'm at home with my wife and kids. On the weekends, nobody's calling me that I got to get on this or I got to get on that. We practice what we preach, okay? And to do that, you need to hire right. So there's a lot of great books out there. Good to Great is one of them, right? Get the right people on the bus, and not only get the right people on the bus, but get the right people in the right seats.
Right.
Because where I made the mistake was I was putting wrong people in the wrong seats all the time. You walk in, hey, I like you, you're hired. Like do you know what a disc profile is?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so we're big.
Everybody here takes them.
Okay, yeah, well, good. Everybody here takes them. So we will not hire unless you take a disc profile, because it comes down to science. At the end of the day, character is a big part of what we do, right? When we're hiring, the disc is like the disc is just to get you through the door. If we're hiring for a specific role, we already know what that disc looks like for that person, and we know how that person needs to be set up, just from a personality and standpoint. And then that's where we start. And then from there, it's where's their integrity? Where's their character? Because you could have the greatest, and it's to flip it around. You could have all the integrity and all the character in the world, but if you're putting the wrong person in the right seat or in the wrong seat, it doesn't matter. All the right intentions, all the best intentions, but eventually they're going to go because it's contradicting how they're made up, or it's going against their natural style.
I think even a more straightforward thing with a disc profile too that we found is that it does take a little bit of effort to actually fill the thing out. It's a little depth. And when you send that to even hiring VAs or contractors, I'm not sure if we do that for every contractor, but I know we do it. We've done it for VAs before. And I know other businesses that do it for everybody. If that person is not willing to fill that entire thing out, they're not
There's your answer. Yeah,
absolutely.
There's your answer.
I think that's absolutely like fantastic. There's tons of tests out there. The 16 personalities test. There's another one that we took. I forget what it's called, but yeah. By the way, Good to Great, guys, read that book. I've got 8 of them right here that we give out to our members at our mastermind. So here, right there. You see
that is awesome.
So,
hey, where's Go Giver? You got Go Giver?
Go Giver is right here.
That's awesome.
Yes, sir. Boom.
That book is awesome. That is the book.
Yes, sir.
Book.
What's awesome is that we actually so these Good to Great and Go Giver, the entire company actually reads a book every single quarter, and then on our every other week we have on Fridays we have a weekly city hall meeting where everybody from the company comes together for about an hour and a half, and at the beginning of the meeting we actually review the chapter of the book that we're reading for that week.
That is awesome.
Good to Great was our first quarter, I believe. Second quarter was Go Giver, and then this quarter is the Compound Effect.
Oh, great. Darren Hardy. Yeah.
It's a fantastic book. So Good to Great is definitely a fantastic thing. I love the whole right people in the right seat on the bus. That's fantastic because you do have to look at your business as a bus, and then you got specific seats that people got to sit in that are designated. Even our business, we found people that were in the wrong seats, and then we evaluated that and like, oh, they're actually not supposed to be doing what they're doing, or they're not doing what they are supposed to be doing, that kind of thing.
And they're in torment because I've gone through that.
Right.
And there's a natural and adaptive style and all that. But piece of advice I got, some great wisdom from a coach one time, said, and when you have the wrong person, right, the mistake people make is they're like, oh, well, I don't want to let them go. Maybe they'll come around, maybe this, maybe that. Yep. You're preventing them from moving on to whatever they've been called to do.
Absolutely.
So you just you hire slow, and unfortunately you got to fire fast. I mean, that's like, if it's not the right fit, let them move on to do whatever they're meant to do, so you guys can focus on doing whatever, or hiring whoever you're meant to hire.
That and what you just said makes so much sense too, because the way you have to look at it is, yes, you got to do it for your own good, but also their own good. Because if somebody's in a place where they're not enjoying what they're doing, then they're not gonna. I've seen it with my own eyes, and I've even been there personally, where I don't enjoy thoroughly what I do for a living, and didn't put out as much production as I should have been. When somebody's in their prime, in their passion, in what they're supposed to be doing and what they're good at, which the disc profile is going to be a big, huge help with telling you that, then people will produce a lot better for you and ultimately double their salary, like what he was saying. So absolutely.
I think it's 123personalitytest.com, something like that. There's an actual free version.
Yeah.
So you can go there if people want to check that out. There was one other thing I was going to say though. Whatever. It's okay. But yeah, I mean, we think alike. I mean, it's encouraging to hear.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
All that stuff.
So we're getting down to the nitty gritty stuff. We're almost out of time here. So Rosario, it's been an awesome podcast. I just got a couple of questions left for you that I ask everybody that I interview. these are always super interesting answers to hear. So I'm very excited to hear what you have to say, because definitely a little bit of a different podcast than what we normally have. So I'm excited about this. So going back, let's wind the clocks back to 2003 when you first got into wholesaling. Now, I know we talked about, kind of going back and doing something different with your wholesaling and then the way you would lease. And you talked about you just didn't do the deals correctly, number-wise. Maybe outside of that, what is something that you know now that you wish you knew back in 2003 before you even got started into any of this? One thing.
The market moves in cycles. So somebody told me this recently. It was a couple of years ago. When you're in real estate for the long haul, you have to look at it in terms of like 10-year blocks. You can't look at it in terms of year to year, because when you're looking at it in terms of year to year, that's, I think, where you get hurt. So where I made the mistake was when the market turned, I'm like, oh, I'm never going to buy real estate again. Like, that was my mindset. I got massacred. I'm never going to. And then all the guys that I was calling when the market was hot that wouldn't buy from me, all the investors that were like, and these old school guys, they're like, no. I'm like, what do you mean? Brick 2 flat on the west side for $50K. And they're like, no. And I'm like, why? They're like, call me in a few months. And all of a sudden that 2 flat went from 80 to 50 to 30. And then they're calling me and they're like, off from 20. And I'm like,
wow.
So you got to think in terms of cycles. You look at some of the wealthiest families in history. That wealth was accumulated over a long period of time. And a lot of times we don't think in terms of generations. We think in terms of this year, that's it, or next year. But I think you should start, at least, if I could go back in time, I would have looked at it in terms of the cycle. I would have found out what the cycle is. And I feel, at least in real estate, it's about a 10-year cycle in most cases, which is interesting because it's 2018.
Right.
I don't have a crystal ball, so I'm not going to go off of that. But what should have happened was when the market took a dive, I should have been aware of where we were in the cycle. And at that point should have raised more money and said, hey, look, I know what just happened, but now everything is discounted big time. It's at some point it's going to come back.
Right. Absolutely. Awesome. So got one more question for Rosario before we wrap this up. But if you guys are joining us Facebook Live, I appreciate you guys jumping on. If you're coming by way of knowing Rosario because he shared this video, then welcome to the Good Success Podcast. We do have a podcast. It's on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. We do go live on Facebook every single Friday at 12 noon Central Standard Time. So make sure you join in on us. So last question I got for you, Rosario, and then we're going to wrap this up. It's been an awesome podcast, man.
Thanks, man.
I was excited about this, and it definitely went as good, if not better, than I thought it was going to. So you got to leave our audience with one thing, whether it's a piece of advice, it's a thought, a quote, whatever it is, just one thing you got to leave our audience with. What would that be?
It's one thing with 2 parts. Is that acceptable?
That's acceptable. as long as it's 2 parts and not 2 separate things.
Okay. Ask better questions and seek wise counsel. Okay. The ask better questions is we get so stuck in asking why when we should be asking what and how. Okay. So when you run into a situation, don't say why, because sometimes your brain is going to tell you or give you the wrong answer. So instead ask what and how, right? And then seek wise counsel, because there's a lot of bad counsel out there. And where I made my biggest mistakes is when I was asking for everyone's opinion. Now, I could count the guys that I go to on my hand, who I trust with making those big decisions. So ask better questions and seek wise counsel.
That's absolutely awesome. I love that last part too, because I actually just finished Think and Grow Rich, and there's an entire chapter on mastermind, which we obviously have our mastermind, but I think more along the lines of what you're saying is like having that core group of people that you trust that are far ahead of where you're at, have been there, done that, and have the experience that you can actually fall back on and kind of chime in on them. They're your lifeline. if you have questions or any decisions, big decisions you got to make. So
100%. Yeah.
love that. Awesome. All right. Well, Rosario, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, how would they be able to do that?
Email is best. Rosario@clickinvest.com. That's ROSARIO @click, like mouse click, CLICK, invest, INVEST.com.
Sweet deal. Sweet deal. And we're going to have that linked below for you guys so you can copy and paste that into an email or whatever. And then we're also going to have Clickinvest down below in the link, linked in the description. So make sure you guys check that website out as well and learn more about Clickinvest. This is a great platform for you guys to check out. And just obviously you guys just listen to this entire interview. It was fantastic. So Rosario, appreciate you being on, man. We're definitely going to have you back soon. And we hope to see you at one of our events in the future. Definitely, for sure. So
I will definitely be there now that I know what your library is made up of, for sure.
There is about 50 books stacked up here that we send to our mastermind members. So we're definitely readers, and we strongly believe in that. So good stuff.
Well, thank you very much for having me on. I'm very grateful again, and God bless you guys. Thank you.
Awesome. So that's going to do it for today's episode, guys. We do have a few links below. So obviously we have, like I said, we have Rosario's information down in the description. And then also communitygogiver.com is where you could sign up for a Community Go Giver event happening in just a couple weeks. We are very, very close to selling out. So make sure you guys go get your tickets right away. It's a 3-day event, July 25, 26, and 27, all about educational stuff on low-income housing, turnkey, and then fix and flip. It's going to be super fantastic. We're very excited about it. It's coming in hot. We're getting a little antsy, but it's very exciting as well. And then we have our Good Success Mastermind coming up August 9, 10, and 11. That is also happening in our backyard. I did fail to mention the Community Go Giver events happening in our office. The mastermind's happening in our backyard at the Innsbrook Country Club in Maryville, Indiana, about 10 minutes away from our office. So we're very excited about that. You can sign up at goodsuccess.com/mastermind. You'll have to talk to Jared Stoltmeister, who's the gatekeeper for the mastermind. We don't let just anybody in. Yes, we do vet your deals and your deal flow and what your business scaled up looks like, but then also your characters. A lot of stuff that we talked about with Rosario on if you're a giver, if you support charities, if you have the same core values as we do. Our core values are charity, stewardship, community, and growth. And so we want to make sure that we vet everybody on there because we have an incredible culture in our mastermind that we absolutely love. So that's going to be linked in the description below, goodsuccess.com/mastermind. Make sure you guys subscribe to our podcast. We're on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. We do go Facebook Live every single Friday at 12 noon Central Standard Time. So join us on there. Thank you guys for watching and listening. And remember, whether you're looking to survive, thrive, or matter, our goal is to provide the tools to reach your vision. Thanks again for listening. And until next time.